Órale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFP podcast. This is Jorge Martin. Hey, we are on YouTube, Familia. You know what? We got the NFL Insider Series. This is one of the main reasons to subscribe. I mean, obviously we're year round, but we're gonna got NFL insiders from all 32 teams. We're bringing it to you, getting ready for training camp, getting ready for the fantasy football season, and to another group that's helping you get ready for the fantasy football season, Fantasy Points. Mis amigos at Fantasy Points. We are a proud member of the Fantasy Points Media Group. Hey, when you go there, and when you go to fantasypoints.com, you get some of the best minds. You got John Hansen, Tom Brawley, Scott Barrett, Graham Barfield, Joe Dolan, Wes Huber. All of these people have been on the show or coming on the
Studs.
show. Just studs in the yes. And so make sure when you go there, when you get a subscription, put Familia 22 or Familia 22, and then get 10% off your subscription. So we'll help you out on that one. And speaking of studs, we have got Tyler Rowland, mi amigo. I tell you, it is such a pleasure to have you back. You know what? I mean, Numero uno, he is the host of the Locked On Titans podcast. So it's the number one daily podcast for the Titans. So he is on all the time, bringing you the latest and greatest. It's just so much. I mean, film study, great analysis. I mean, just awesome. And on top of everything, last year he gave me the number one, el número uno pull quote when it came to Mexican food. When he said, and I quote, it said, where is that quote right now? Yes. When you're spreading Mexican food, you are spreading happiness. So yes. We're spreading happiness. Tyler Rowland, help me spread some happiness, mi amigo. Welcome in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on again. One of my favorite special guest appearances I get to do every year. And I live by that quote. We're spreading happiness, spreading Mexican food, especially, my favorite chimichangas forever. So have yourself some chimichangas. Get ready for the football season. Can't be happier than that. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, I'm so happy you're on, and your Locked On Titans podcast is really just kicking butt. You're continuing to do that, and what is it? You were telling me 46 out of the 52 weeks of the year, you're every day of the week. So right now it's your slow period, right?
Yeah, 3 days a week for like a 4 to 6 week period. But I mean, honestly, it's like if you have a vacation. I don't know about you guys. You take a long vacation. By the end of the vacation, sometimes you're like, okay, I'm ready to go home, get back to my work, get back to what I like to do. So I'm getting to that point right now where I'm itching for the football season. Next Monday, 2 weeks before training camp, ready to go back 5 days a week, daily Titans content. I'm excited for it, man. I love to talk ball, and with football right around the corner, you can smell it.
Oh man, just like a chimichanga, right?
Yes.
Just as appetizing. So before we get in, I had to ask, and it's something that I forgot to ask you last year. Your Twitter handle, Tic Tac Titans, is so unique. How did you come up with that Twitter handle?
Okay, so the story was when I originally took over the Locked On Titans podcast before the 2019 season, there were some issues with getting the Locked On Titans Twitter account, like the one that was actually made by the original hosts doing the show. I wasn't able to get access, and as you could tell, I still don't have access to the original Locked On Titans official podcast account. So in lieu of having access to that account, I had to create my own and kind of start from the ground up, and didn't really get to take advantage of the following that was built by the original host. So I kind of had to start things from the ground up. And I always knew that I wanted to have a focus on film, a deep understanding of what the Titans are doing out on the field schematically, not just the talking head stuff and the numbers. And I want to talk about football. That's what I love the most. What defense is doing, what plays are being run on offense, how they're attacking. So for me, I was like, hey, I'm going to talk about the X's and the O's. That's what I'm going to focus on, the film. Well, X's and O's reminds me of tic-tac-toe, and I love alliteration, as the people who listen to my show on a regular basis know one of my big addictions in life is alliteration. I love that, first beginning letter staying the same does something to me. So Tic Tac Titans, a touch on the corny side, a touch on the creative side, whatever you want to look at it as. But Tic Tac Titans, I'm focused on the X's and O's of the Titans, so I felt like it was clever enough to make me happy, and also to the point enough where you'd know exactly what I'm talking about.
Exactly. Love it. Love it. Oh, thank you. So you just cleared up something that's been on my mind,
Mm-hmm.
that now I can sleep tonight. So thank you
There
for
you
giving
go.
me that.
Yes. Peace.
uh, oh man, salud, mi amigo. So let's turn the focus to 2022. We got Ryan Tannehill at the quarterback, and rough season for him. He had skill players hurt left and right. His wide receiver, I mean, AJ Brown missed time.
Right.
Julio Jones missed a big chunk of the season. So his TDs came down from 33 to 21. He still threw 7. So there's that, and then then the Titans drafted Malik Willis. So there was all that brouhaha about I'm
Yes.
not here to mentor the guy, which it's all good. When we're looking at him now going into the season, brand new wide receiver room, at least at the top, and you still got that that big monster and monstro, that unicorn coming out of the backfield, who we'll talk about. But Ryan Tannehill, even in a rough season, he still finished 12th in QB 12 in overall fantasy ratings. What, with breaking in new receivers, kind of maybe looking behind his back without over his shoulder, what is kind of like the outlook for Tannehill this year?
Sure. Well, from a fantasy perspective, what I would say is don't worry about Malik Willis being an issue with Ryan Tannehill fantasy wise. Malik Willis isn't at maximum. Maybe Malik Willis takes a couple of rushing touchdowns, but I don't even think that that's the case with the way that they're treating Malik Willis right now. I hope that Malik Willis is incorporated in at least a small role just to utilize his rushing talent early on. But I don't think, even if he is, which I don't think he will be, even if he is, it's not going to be a detriment to Ryan Tannehill in a significant way fantasy wise. I think that Ryan Tannehill has a much more balanced group of pass catchers now. And although Derrick Henry is in the backfield, I think as we saw last year, you can't overload Derrick Henry too early in the season. You can't make the same mistake you did last year of giving him 30 carries a game the first, 8 games of the year. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but it was close, and you can't have that. So the Titans have to find a way not only to have a more reliable, short, quick passing game to help, supplement the run game, but they also have to get Ryan Tannehill back to running the football on those play action bootlegs that the Titans like to do. They fake it to Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill rolls out to the backside, and he can climb up the field and get rushing yards that way. So I think with a more balanced group of pass catchers for the Titans, not so heavy at the, obviously you had A.J. Brown, but after that, with all the injuries, the Titans basically had nothing. You're hoping that Robert Woods, Treylon Burks, the rookie, Nick Westbrook-Akina going into his 3rd season, Kyle Phillips, a rookie out of UCLA. And then I want to talk about Austin Hooper eventually, but you have Austin Hooper. They added a rookie tight end in Chigakonkwo who has impressed early on in training camp in the early portions of the offseason. With a more balanced group that's hopefully healthier, I think that'll allow Ryan Tannehill to be a little bit better fantasy-wise, and I think the Titans will use more 2 tight end sets to get back to that play-action bootleg game that allows them to be more efficient, more effective in the run game as well. I don't expect Tannehill to be a top-tier fantasy quarterback this year like he was at certain times in 2020 and 2019, but I do think he could be, if you're a person who wants to go a little bit cheaper at quarterback and look for more of a, that 9 to 14 to 15 range, I think you could get Ryan Tannehill. And if you're in a league that has a small amount of teams, like 8 to 10, I think Tannehill could absolutely be a valuable streamer for you throughout the season if you have to go off the scrap heap for buys or injuries.
Yeah, and exactly, and actually seems to be also really pretty valuable in super flex leagues to as that set. If he's not your star.
Second quarterback. Yeah, if you could pair him with one of the top quarterbacks, I think that'd be a great choice.
And do you still see? I mean, 7 touchdowns back-to-back seasons. Does it seem like the running game? He's going to continue to keep running the ball?
Yeah, and I think, like I said, even if that drops off a little bit with Malik Willis later in the season, the thing is with Malik Willis is he came from an offense in college that didn't go under center. The things that Malik Willis is trying to work on right now, as the coaching staff has outlined in their interviews, is operational things, getting everybody in the huddle, calling the play correctly with the correct terminology, getting the offense lined up properly, understanding, hey, if the defense does this, I got to send this guy in motion. I got to flex the offense formation the other way. I got to audible and switch the run play from the right side to the left side. Those things are what Malik is working on. And when you're working on those sort of operational things, it's hard to start working on special packages for during the games. You know what I mean? So I think even if Malik Willis does have some of those packages and has an imprint in the run game, it won't be enough. It'll happen later in the season. It won't be enough to hurt Ryan Tannehill. And with the Titans going back to, like I said, more two tight end situations on offense, I think that's going to increase Ryan Tannehill's ability to get out on that play action bootleg and run. So I think his run production should actually go up, even if Malik Willis gets involved in the run game later on in the season.
Okay. All right. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So I guess, when it comes to Malik Willis, I mean, nobody's drafting him. And unless it's a dynasty league.
Dynasty league, it makes some sense. But I mean, honestly, if you're in a redraft league, I wouldn't be interested in Malik Willis early on. If Tannehill were to get hurt for any reason, then yeah, I would try to use my waiver claim and pick up Malik Willis, because that rushing, if Malik Willis were to start, and that would only happen if Tannehill got hurt. If Malik Willis were to start, I think that it would be a Jalen Hurts rookie year, Lamar Jackson rookie year, Robert Griffin III rookie year situation, Tim Tebow even rookie season and Tim Tebow's career. I think they'd go with an offensive style like that and try to run the ball 70% of the game. And I think that would turn Malik Willis like Trey Lance when he played for the 49ers at all. When Trey Lance got in the lineup, a lot of times you could count on, pretty solid quarterback production. And I think you would get that from Malik Willis if Ryan Tannehill were to get hurt. But if not, I wouldn't even have Malik Willis as a rosterable guy in a redraft league. Dynasty, like you said, different though.
So one guy who's still gonna, even coming off of the foot injury. Now you mentioned you weren't totally exaggerating 30 times a game, because you ran 219 times in 8 games. So that's
insane.
27, 28. Yep. We're talking like 70s and 80s, 60s, 70s and 80s type of numbers. Derrick Henry, the unicorn himself. I mean, just the man, the myth, el monstruo. I mean, he's just, when he's healthy, he's one of the most devastating rushers. He has gotten a lot of miles on him in the last 3 years. Last year, it could be said, was it the mileage or was it just a freak injury? He was having a spectacular season up until that point. He was on his way. I think he was on his way to breaking Eric Dickerson's record. He's on that side after, now people are saying 26, 27, but for the peak age for running backs, he's such a unicorn, as you called him last year. What are we looking at from him? Are they going to peel back a little bit the workload, or still going to ride him?
Well, I think they have to peel back the workload, but also when you have Derrick Henry, a unicorn, or one of his other official nicknames, El Tractorcito, is what they like to call him as well. When you have a guy that talented, even if you want to minimize his workload a little bit, lessen it a little bit, you don't go away from the beast entirely. So I'm still expecting at least 20, 22 carries a game. But the Titans did bring in a rookie running back from Michigan named Hassan Haskins. And in previous years, people had asked me, Tyler, who's the handcuff for Derrick Henry? There wasn't an answer. It was Adrian Peterson. Was it Jeremy McNichols? Now, is it Deontay Foreman? Is it Dontrell Hilliard? There was never a good answer going into the season of who that would be. Well, we know that Hassan Haskins is that guy that if the Titans lose Henry for any time, you know that you got his handcuff in Hassan Haskins. So I'm expecting Haskins to get 4 to 6 carries a game to help lighten that load as another big physical back who can run similarly to Derrick Henry. But I think that the Titans could be more effective and efficient in the run game this year. I know they still were really good last year as well. They're a top 5 run blocking offensive line. But I'm going to hit on this a lot, and I talked about this with Ryan Tannehill. Now we're back, this common theme, the improvement of the tight end group for the Titans will be critical to the offense. That not only benefits Ryan Tannehill, but that benefits Derrick Henry, obviously. Austin Hooper was brought over from the Cleveland Browns. Jeff Swaim, who in my opinion is nowhere close to a starting level tight end. He's a tight end 3, a tight end 2 in run situations at max. They slot him more effectively rather than having Jeff Swaim as your tight end 1. Who would have thought that would have been a disaster? Duh. They add Chigakonkwo, who maybe isn't going to be a monster in the blocking game because he is a thinner tight end right now, but he's a guy who has the willingness, has the physicality, and if he can just learn more technique to help him while he bulks up, I think he could be effective as a blocker. Tory Carter, the fullback for the Titans, one of the more unsung heroes on the offense. When the Titans have their number 1 fullback, Tory Carter, the offense ran the ball far better statistically. They were more efficient in the run game, yards per carry. So a healthy Tory Carter at fullback, the addition of Austin Hooper and Chigakonkwo at tight end, I think will allow the Titans, as I mentioned, to go back to more 2 tight end formations, 3 tight end formations, 22 personnel with 2 tight ends and a fullback. I think the Titans can go back to more of those heavy personnel packages, which will allow them to run the ball more effectively. So even if Derrick Henry does slow down a little bit because of the wear and tear, even if Derrick Henry has 4 or 5 carries taken by Hassan Haskins, I think the improvement at tight end in the run game could help Derrick Henry still be around 1,500 rushing yards and double-digit touchdowns, which would make him an RB1 this season. So I would take him still in the first round if you could.
Haskins could be a factor later in the season, or still just he's like 4 to 5 or so carries a game.
I guess if he proved it, if you're somebody who drafts Derrick Henry, not a lot of people are going to be thinking about Hassan Haskins. So I would get him later on in the draft. Maybe your last non-defense, non-kicker pick is what I would be looking like, and I would stash him, and then I would just keep an eye on him. In a dynasty league, I'd take a chance on Haskins late, because if Henry does get hurt, or if later in the year Haskins is just running well and they want to keep that balance and keep Henry fresh, I think there is a chance that he could be a valuable fantasy player. So it's more of a wait and see approach with Haskins than I think he's going to be an impactful player. But again, if you draft Derrick Henry in the first round, I think having your last position player be your handcuff and Hassan Haskins would still be a smart move, not only to back up Derrick Henry, but if he does, prove that he can get 10 carries in a game later on in the season as the Titans want to keep Henry fresh.
So let's go to the receivers now. I want to get into the tight ends in a second, but the receivers, two Robert Woods coming in off of the ACL surgery, beginning of the season, he's going to be about 10 months out from his injury. You got Treylon Burks, first round draft pick, coming over for AJ Brown. He's going to have big shoes to fill. AJ Brown definitely took him about half a season to get his feet under him in the NFL.
Right.
And I just saw a report that Nick Westbrook-Ikine might be more of the number 2 option, and with Burks as the number 3. Can you kind of give me a little bit of a look at how the targets are going to be broken up?
Yeah, I think depending on ADP, I would be worried about Robert Woods. In my opinion, he's a wide receiver 2 in the NFL. In his career, we've seen him, think about Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cooks with the Rams. He was always that number 2 guy who the coverage would be focused on the other guy, and it would allow him to utilize his craft and his intelligence to slip into those holes into a zone defense, to understand that, hey, I'm getting outside press, outside technique from the corner. I got Brandon Cooks next to me in the slot. They're more focused on him. I can run my route this way, and I know I'm going to be open based on the technique and the coverage that I'm going to see. Being the number 2 wide receiver and the complementary wide receiver to the guy who gets more attention, I think has always allowed Robert Woods to be his best. Well, I don't think the Titans planned on trading A.J. Brown when they traded for Robert Woods. I don't think they planned on Robert Woods being their number 1 wide receiver. With him sliding into that role, taking the majority of the attention, coverages, if they have to, we're going to roll towards Robert Woods, who's getting close to 30, coming off an ACL tear. I think he's going to be healthy, but he was never the most explosive athlete anyway, especially the circumstances I just mentioned. I know people are going to look at Robert Woods and think, hey, he's going to be the number 1 wide receiver in Tennessee. There's going to be value there. just buyer beware. I think you're going to get way more value in a guy that you just mentioned and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine going into his third season as an undrafted free agent for the Titans out of Indiana. He has impressed. He has gone far above what you would have expected from him coming out of college, not even being drafted. He was the Titans' second leading receiver last year, even though there were a ton of injuries that gave him those opportunities. He's a guy who blocks really well. And like I said, I expect the Titans to play more two tight end formations. Well, in a two tight end formation with Derrick Henry in the backfield, that only gives you two wide receivers on the field. If the Titans had to put two wide receivers on the field, it's going to be Robert Woods. And like you said, it's going to be Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. He went for over 400 yards last year. He's a 6'3" guy who's a big body who can help you in the red zone. I think that Nick Westbrook-Ikhine has a chance to catch 50 balls, 600 yards, 4 touchdowns. And I know that doesn't pop off the screen and sound great, but when you're trudging through the fantasy football season, if you have a guy on your bench who can give you 50 yards, a touchdown, 4 or 5 catches, and spot duty throughout the year, I think there's value in having that kind of guy later in the draft. So I would target Nick Westbrook-Ikhine as a sleeper option for the Titans far before I would target Treylon Burks and Robert Woods, who are going to go ahead of him ADP-wise.
So speaking of Burks, obviously there was the reports about him having asthma and struggling with the humidity in the there in Tennessee. I mean, it's not exactly the fortuitous start. But he was drafted to play. He's a first round draft pick. Could this be a season like so many where they kind of find their feet after halfway through the season and then maybe contribute in the second half, similar to AJ Brown in his rookie year?
Yeah, I think that absolutely will be the case, because I think the big problem is that Treylon Burks not being in shape early on, he missed out on good portions of organized team activities, of mandatory minicamp. So when you miss out on those times, it's not just about, not being in shape to be out there and play, but all of the reps, the mental reps, running through plays, hearing the play called, Ryan Tannehill saying, hey, I need you at 16 yards on the post, not 14. You're going to be too close to the linebackers. All those things are little things that you can't work out if you simply aren't out there. Now, I don't expect Treylon Burks' conditioning to be a huge issue going into training camp, and I would keep an eye on that, really. I think that gives us a real answer to your question of whether he can be effective and productive early on, or whether it is a wait and see and hope at the end of the season. If he goes through training camp and he's in good condition and he can just and listen, asthma, probably hard to play with, but there are tons of NFL players and professional athletes who are able to perform and stay in good shape and be conditioned with asthma. So I can't make it some big excuse and crutch for him. He should have been in better shape, even with the asthma. So that's how I feel. Hopefully that changes. I think that obviously the coaching staff had to be on him about his conditioning. And if he comes into training camp and he is well conditioned and ready to go, and that's a thing of the past, then I would be like, okay, maybe Treylon Burks can come in and compete right away. Because like we said, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is really the only thing stopping Treylon Burks. So Treylon Burks at his best should absolutely play over NWI, as we like to call him, with the Titans. So just monitor training camp for fantasy purposes. If Burks is limited at all, take the signs for what they are and stay away early. But if the tide turns and everybody's saying, oh, those are a thing of the past, Burks looks good, he's making plays, then I would be more inclined to maybe target him in the mid rounds.
Oh, outstanding. All right, one of the big teasers, you talked about the tight ends. Austin Hooper has been a player who has had expectations about him to be a move tight end. Could he kind of sneak into tight end relevancy?
Yes, I do think so. I think the Titans like to throw to the tight end. The Titans like to use tight ends. It's a volume situation as well, where Austin Hooper is going to be on the field so much because the Titans need those heavy tight end personnel. Again, full circle. Every topic that we've hit at some point in time has come back to the dual tight ends. With dual tight ends on the field, 2 tight end sets, 3 tight end sets, Austin Hooper is absolutely going to be out there every single time. So I think Austin Hooper has the chance to catch 50 to 60 passes, get you 600 to 700 yards and 4 touchdowns. I think he could absolutely be tight end 8, tight end 9, tight end 10, maybe even tight end 7 or 6, approaching the top 5 with what he can do within the Titans offense and how much they'll rely on tight ends. But I also have to throw in for the dynasty players, and even maybe late in the season, Chig Okonkwo. Everybody loved Jonnu Smith for the last few seasons. And yeah, he disappointed in New England last year. But those last couple of years in Tennessee, he was a great, low-end tight end 1 option. Chig Okonkwo has a similar skill set. He's been incredibly impressive in the early portions of the offseason. If I'm a dynasty player, I am absolutely drafting Chig Okonkwo. Nobody in your league is going to know who that is. And if I'm a fantasy player, I'm setting the alert on Chig Okonkwo. And if you start to see a couple of red zone touchdowns in the middle of the year, scoop him up for the end of the year. You might have yourself a playoff winning player late in the season. Chig Okonkwo, the rookie tight end out of Maryland for the Titans. Keep your eye on him for fantasy.
Amigo, I'm glad I can delay the release of this because I can go to my dynasty teams and
Yes.
go hit the waiver wire there and grab him up. So if you're not playing dynasty with me, go get Chig Okonkwo. Listen to my man. Offensive line. We talked about the offensive line last year. Injuries played a part. How's this group shaping up for this year?
Well, there are some concerns there. I'd say that's the biggest question for the Titans offense right now. They're probably going to be installing second-year player out of North Dakota State, Dylan Radins, as the right tackle. He did have a great game on Thursday Night Football going up against Nick Bosa last year when the Titans played the 49ers. Bosa actually switched sides halfway through the game because the rookie was giving him trouble, quite honestly. But the Titans had Dylan Radins inactive at times last year, so it wasn't, all butterflies and rainbows for Radins. So that's a big area of concern and an area to watch. And then the left guard position is a battle between Jamarco Jones and Aaron Brewer. I think Jamarco Jones wins that, but he only played a little over 100 snaps at left guard last year for Seattle, and it wasn't all great. So I think there are 2 areas on the Titans offensive line where they stand to maybe be worse than last year. Maybe not right tackle. If Radins plays up to his draft position, that could be an improvement, but I'm a little worried about the left guard position for the Titans. But the reality here is, as we see all over the NFL, the zone run scheme that the Titans have makes it easier on offensive linemen to do well with the amount of double teams and their athletic offensive linemen that the Titans target. Getting them in a zone system helps cater to what they do well as a player. So I think the Titans system in general will keep the run game at a place where, Derrick Henry's still fantasy relevant. Ryan Tannehill can get things done. But I think pass protection wise is where I'm a little bit more concerned for the Titans offense. But I don't think the Titans passing offense outside of A.J. Brown has ever been incredibly attractive. Anyway, you're, looking mid rounds and trying to get some value and maybe some sleepers with the Titans passing offense. I don't think that the offensive line changes that.
And you reminded me of that Thursday night game where it seemed like it was AJ Brown and Deebo Samuel. It was like they were going one-on-one with each other. It was one of it was fun to watch those two as a pure football fan.
Yes, it was. It was a good time. And I think Titans fans, just because it's the nature of fans, you always stay positive and root for your team. I think some people forget that although AJ Brown was banged up at times last year and missed some games, when he played, he single-handedly carried them to victories in some games. I think the Titans are going to miss A.J. Brown quite a bit.
I think so. That one's tough. He's one of my favorite players to watch when he's healthy. He's it's almost like he's unstoppable. I mean, I love watching him play. The other side of the ball, I remember last year, one of the big concerns going into the season was the defensive line. And I'm having another prime time flashback when they just basically dismantled the Rams, the guards going up through the middle. I mean, it was just the defensive tackles seemed to be in Matthew Stafford's face the entire game. We had increases. We had increases in sacks, which obviously helps the pass defense. How do they shape up this year against the pass and against the run?
Well, I think last year, Bud Dupree, the Titans signed as a free agent. He was coming off an ACL tear. He tried to push it a little too hard early in the season, had some setbacks, and really was off and on the field throughout the year. He's healthy right now, saying he feels better than ever. Everybody knows the second year after the ACL tear is always when a player really starts to look like themselves. With Harold Landry brought back under contract with double-digit sacks last year, Jeffrey Simmons as the honestly the best defensive tackle in the NFL outside of Aaron Donald, really ascending and getting that respect he deserves this year, and only looking to get better with his pass rush skill set. Danico Autry's the most underrated pass rusher in the NFL with inside-outside versatility, and then Bud Dupree being healthy. I think the Titans, you get points for sacks on defense. I think the Titans are going to get more sacks this year than the 43 they got last year, which is a lot of points for fantasy players. I also think because the pass rush is going to be even better and the Titans are going to be even more comfortable on defense in the secondary this year, I think there will be more turnovers, more forced fumbles. I think the Titans will be a prime time fantasy defense, and I don't think that they're a fantasy defense that people are going to pick in the top 10. So I think you can wait on defense in a 10, 12 team league. And I think you can snatch the Titans up as that 10th or 12th defense drafted. And you're going to have yourself a top 5 scoring defense by the end of the season.
How do they shape up from a run defense standpoint?
The Titans, they may, in certain games where they're not as focused on stopping the run, give up some run. But Mike Vrabel has a great idea of how to stop the run, and the Titans have proven throughout the last few seasons that they can play some great run defense if that's what the game plan calls for. So I would not worry about I think the Titans defense is going to be top 5 in almost all categories. I think they're set up to be an absolutely incredible defense this year.
Oh, mi amigo, this was awesome. This was awesome.
Every time.
Such a thorough. You just, so last one, always a fun one. You sang the praises of chimichangas. Have you branched out on, found another number 2 favorite?
You know what? I'm a man who just knows what I like. I like tacos. I like chimichangas. I can't go wrong with a good burrito, but why not fry it? You know what I mean? That's every time I'm eating a burrito, I just think to myself, what if this burrito was fried? That probably makes me sound like a typical American, but you know what? Maybe I am. And maybe that's a good thing because chimichangas are truly a blessing. So yeah, I'm just a simple man. Give me a nice chimichanga with some shredded pork or some shredded beef. And it's hard to beat that. It's hard for me to order anything else.
And you're spreading happiness in the process, right? In the process. Oh, mi amigo. Thank you so much. Esto fue un gran placer, just an absolute pleasure. As always, you're awesome. Familia, please give him a follow. Check out his podcast. I mean, as you can see, this is the type of analysis you're going to get from this man. Anything you want to be pumping that's coming out soon?
Other than just the Locked On Titans podcast, free and available on all platforms, check out the Locked On Titans YouTube channel. Even if you're not directly a Titans fan, I mean, I'm always looking for something to listen to on YouTube. So I'm there. It's free Monday through Friday. Like I said, 46 out of 52 weeks of the year. So if you subscribe at all to the Locked On Titans podcast, that's all the support I could ever ask for.
Oh, gracias. Yeah, give him a like and subscribe, por favor. Also, if you guys can give us a like and subscribe, that'll help us out on the YouTube page too. So we're just helping each other, helping one another out, just, como hermanos. Man. Thank you again, familia. Again, let's make sure when you're going to fantasypoints.com, as Tyler said, studs, you got some studs, working there, putting out great content. Put in that promo code Familia22 and get your 10% off. And again, I'm going to be continue to keep pushing the content. We are past the halfway point on our NFL Insider series. So we're going to be finishing up right around the end of July, and we're going to be putting out content at familiaffb.com. I'm going to keep pushing out everything at my Twitter at Jorge Martin 17 and Instagram, Facebook, Familia FFB. Get there. Otra vez, muchas gracias to Tyler, and gracias to you guys for listening. And remember, todos somos familia. Salud.